Hello guys, today I want to tell you about the basic of the freedom. Before we start freedom, the kinds of topics in freedom, I want to tell you about the basic of freedom. Yeah, I just say that. So basically, as I searched from Google and some books, the main things in freedom is the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. So basically, freedom is just like a human right. You know what the human right? So, and the freedom is defined by Merriam-Webster as the quality or state of being free, such as the absence of necessity, coercion. Yes, coercion is just like threatening someone to do something that the threatener wants, or constraint in choice or action. Liberation from slavery or from the power of another, boldness of conceptions or execution. The humans have freedom to act to express what they have or what they want, but you cannot have freedom. Yes, of course, people cannot have freedom if they cannot take the responsibilities. As I found from John Kersey's dictionary, so based on John Kersey, freedom is independence that free from laws. It means people are free to not do something. And based on Black's dictionary, freedom means independency from all prohibitions except prohibitions that occur in legislation. So here the main the the branches of freedom. The freedom topics cover the freedom to be able to express identity, thinking, individuality, culture, and heritage. So, as I thought, it means you can express your identity in some countries, but in their countries have their own laws to express your freedom. Yes, and I will tell you about the freedom identity, just the basic, not the detail, because I'm not really sure if I understand it deeply. Freedom identity, it can be called the right to personal identity. The right to personal identity is recognized in international law through a range of declarations and conventions. From as early as birth, an individual's identity is formed and preserved by registration or being bestowed with a name. However, personal identity becomes more complex as an individual develops a conscience, but human rights exist to defend and protect individuality. As quoted by law professor Jill Marshall, human rights law exists to ensure that individual lifestyle choices are protected from majoritarian or populist infringement. Despite the complexity of personal identity, it is preserved and encouraged through privacy, personality rights, and the right to self-expression. Okay, guys, I think just that's all that I know about the freedom identity. Yeah, actually, there is any laws about freedom in each country, but they maybe it will be explained with another member. Okay, thank you very much.
Freedom of thinking, also called the freedom of thoughts or freedom of conscience or ideas, is the freedom of an individual to hold on or consider a fact, viewpoint, or thought independent of other viewpoints. It is different from and not to be confused with the concept of freedom of speech or expression. Freedom of thought is the precursor and progenitor of and thus it is closely linked to other liberties, including freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and freedom of expression. Though freedom of thought is axiomatic for many other freedom, they are in no way required for it to operate and exist. Conception of a freedom or a right does not guarantee its inclusion, legality, or protection via a philosophical caveat. It is a very important concept in the Western world, and nearly all democratic constitutions protect these freedoms. For instance, the Bill of Rights contains the famous guarantee in the First Amendment that laws may not be made that interfere with religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Everyone has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. This right includes freedom to change his religion or belief, and freedom, either alone or in community with other and public or private, to manifest his religion or belief on teaching, practice, worship, and observance. The United Nations Human Rights Committee states that this distinguishes the freedom of thought, conscience, religion, or belief from the freedom to manifest religion or belief. It does not permit any limitation whatsoever on the freedom of thought and conscience or on the freedom to have or adopt religion or belief of one's choice. These freedoms are protected unconditionally. Similarly, Article 19 of the UDHR guarantees that everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. That right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference. It is impossible to know with certainty what another person is thinking, making suppression difficult. Although Greek philosopher Plato and Socrates had discussion freedom of thought minimally, the Ethic of King Asoka have been called the first decree respecting freedom of conscience in European tradition, aside from the decree of religion tolerance by Constantine I at Milan in 313. The philosopher Themistocles, Michael de Montaigne, Baruch Spinoza, Locke, Voltaire, Alexander Vinet, and John Stuart Mill have been considered major proponents of the idea of freedom of conscience. However, freedom of expression can be limited through censorship, arrest, book burning, or propaganda, and this tends to discourage freedom of thought. Examples of the effective campaigns against freedom of expression are the Soviet suppression or genetic research in favor of a theory known as Lysenkoism, the book-burning campaigns of Nazi Germany, the radical anti-intellectualists enforced in Cambodia under Pol Pot, the strict limits on freedom of expression imposed by the Communist government of the People's Republic of China and Cuba, or by right-wing authoritarian dictatorship such as those of Augusto Pinochet in Chile and Francisco Franco in Spain. Basically, freedom of thought is the one's freedom to have or to consider.
Okay, guys, next material is about freedom of individuality. The term individuality itself and its equivalents in other languages dates like socialism and other is from the 19th century. Then, the utilization of individuality in various countries. During the upheaval of the French Revolution, individualism was used disparagingly in French to signify the sources of social dissolution and anarchy and to elevate individual interests over collective interests. In Germany, the idea of individual uniqueness or Einzigkeit and self-realization. In England, individuality includes religious incompatibilities. The French aristocratic political philosopher Alexis de Tocqueville (1805 till 1859) described individuality in terms of a kind of moderate selfishness in which people think only of their small circle of family and friends. According to the dictionary, individuality is the particular character or aggregate of qualities that distinguishes one person or thing from others. So, it means that individuality consists of the qualities and characteristics that make a person, every person being who they are. The general public is constantly saying that every single human being in this earth must be or have act a certain way to be popular, but people should need to embrace their individuality and show it off because it makes them be a unique person. Yeah, you know, in this world that's full of crazy expectation and varying definition of perfection, being different is a burdensome undertaking. To break the ongoing cycles of culture today, people need to be original, creative, and diverse to truly be themselves, just being who you are. Okay, every individual needs happiness. Individual happiness can be defined as the positive, conscious, emotional experience that accompanies or derives from the use of one's human potentialities. The potentialities that include talents and then capabilities and virtues. The sense of belonging to really chosen communities, it is an important constituent of happiness. Actually, the individual is metaphysically primary. It means that individual people himself or herself, communities which are secondary and derivative. Then, even though the individual is metaphysically, communities are very, very important. Yeah, you know that we are as the social human need communities to find out who we are, and also because people need other person to reach their potential for happiness because people can't stand alone like that. Okay.
Okay guys, now it's my turn to explain the culture. The culture was born in every places around the world. In every places, it has its own culture. Every culture around the world is unique and different. According to Raymond Williams, he defined culture as a particular way of life which expresses certain meanings and values not only in art and learning but also in institution and ordinary behavior. Now I would like to ask all of you to compare three nations between British, American and Australian, which they use English as a main communication. In British, English language is the mother tongue and most commonly spoken daily by the people of the United Kingdom. The culture of British is combined by nation history, its interaction with the cultural tradition of England, Wales, and Scotland. Britain has made a contribution in art, such as literature, music, theatre, and architecture. Now let's have a look at the Beatles as an example. The Beatles
is a band from Liverpool, United Kingdom. It's one of the famous bands which is live from old until now. And the major religion on Britain is Christian, and followed minor religion by Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and etc. Then the second is American. On United States, it has no official language, but they commonly use English to communicate. The arts in the United States, including of architecture, music, and broadcasting. And I have an example for a famous music which belongs to United States. Let's say Elvis Presley. There are various religions on US, but most of them have faith on the democratic form of government, which is called the will of God. The last is Australia. The Australia culture is prominent into Western culture, but it is also using the genuine culture of Aborigine. The dominant religion on this country is Christianity. Australia has no official language, but still using English as a national language. The arts in Australia consisting of literature, architecture, and music.
Okay, now I would like to explain about America Heritage of Freedom. The first is American culture. Americans are just as free to pick and choose which aspects of culture that they wish to enjoy. They can attend operas, concerts, square dancing, listen to jazz band in a nightclub without any worries of prohibited, because there are no law that restrict those things. And the second is freedom of speech and press. Americans believe in a person's right to say, write, and publish what they think. Sometimes a man earns the scorn and ridicule of his fellow citizens if he voices unpopular ideas. But basically, they believe that ideas should be allowed to undergo the test of investigation and free discussion. We have confidence that the good and the true will trump over the ideas that are evil and false. And the third is freedom of assembly. Americans believe that men would have the right to gather to discuss common problems and what they wish to do about them. In the United States, it is our right, our established custom, to organize in groups to promote ideas of every kind from vegetarianism to constitutional reform. And the fourth is freedom of religion. Americans believe that people should have the right to worship God in the way they choose, openly and without fear. In this country, every church and its activities receive equal protection under the law. It means that there are the freedom of religions. And the fifth, equality before the law. Every person, regardless of ancestry or economic condition, shall stand before the law as the equal of every other person. No individual or group shall have special privilege, and none do in the final analysis. And the last one is the right to equal opportunity, to choose to work when, how, and where a person wishes, to start and manage his own business and profit from his inventions. The American can invest, buy, and sell freely so long as it does not conflict with the right of others or public interests. It means that everyone has opportunity, but because is a freedom, there is still a limitation in some aspects.